There's no more land for us to lease out here. When I rushed into the major bank in my pickup truck, the female receptionist named Wendy gave me an openly disgusted look. And when I asked her to call the loan officer, instead of doing as I asked, she made this rude remark. If you're working at a bank counter, there's a level of customer service you're supposed to provide to any client, regardless of who they are. I don't have time to waste either. Especially during this season, I'm extremely busy with the harvest and everything. I finally managed to carve out some time to come here amidst all that. Irritated, I decided I'd had enough. Then I'm canceling the land lease contract. What? Wait, you're leasing out land ? Let me call the representative. Just wait a minute. She suddenly started panicking, but I left the bank without hearing her out till the end. As a result, she would come to regret her behavior in this moment. My name is Sharon. After graduating from agricultural college, I took over my family's farm instead of getting a job. Now at 42, with my elderly parents retired, I manage the vast fields alone. Marriage seems to be a high hurdle for someone from a farming family, so I'm still single. My family home is what you'd call a big landowner in the countryside, if I do say so myself. We own vast tracts of land, as well as numerous rental properties like apartments and parking lots. We do have fields, but actually, we could live comfortably even without doing any farming. However, my parents diligently tilled the fields and cultivated traditional vegetables that have been around for a long time. There are few farmers left growing these vegetables. If we quit, these vegetables might go extinct. They're precious things we've inherited from our ancestors. We'll keep it going as long as we're able. Saying that, they protected the fields passed down through generations. But my parents said there was no need for me to force myself to take over the farm. That land could be turned into vacant lots like our other properties, they said, but I'm an only child. If I don't take over, the traditional vegetables that our ancestors and parents have protected and inherited might die out in my generation. I didn't want to let my parents' efforts, carried on this far, go to waste. For these reasons, when I went to college, I chose an agricultural school and decided to take over the farm. There's a slow season in farming, but no days off. Every day is very busy, but by trying out new fertilizers, improving the soil, the more effort you put in, the better quality vegetables you get. I took pride in the fact that I was carrying on the traditional vegetables, and I lived each day feeling fulfilled in my own way. Even calling it agricultural management, it's quite a sizable operation. Furthermore, since we also own other land and properties, the sums involved are substantial, and at our bank, a man in his 40s named Georgie has been assigned as our representative. He usually comes to our place to handle most of the procedures, but for renewing lease contracts, I have to go to the bank regularly. Normally that's not a problem, but during the busy harvesting season, it's quite difficult to find the time for that. That day too, I was extremely busy in the peak season. I somehow managed to make time and rushed straight from the fields to the major bank in my pickup truck, but the female receptionist named Wendy gave me an openly disgusted look. She twisted her face upon seeing me. When I entered the bank, I was wearing work clothes that could get dirty, since I had come in between tasks. On top of that, I had on boots a typical farmer's style. Admittedly, it's not a neat and tidy appearance, but I had at least brushed off the mud and such out of basic courtesy. It's not some high-end hotel or a party venue. There shouldn't be any dress code for customers visiting a bank. In fact, there are even people who come in sweatpants and sandals, so there's no reason to make such a nasty face at someone in work clothes. Nevertheless, she looked me up and down, wrinkling her nose as if to say I was filthy. Then, she let out an exaggerated sigh. I didn't appreciate her rude attitude of deliberately making it obvious that she found me unpleasant. Yet, it wasn't something I felt the need to complain about either. I just wanted to quickly finish my business and get back to work. Thinking that, I asked with a wry smile for her to call my representative. "Excuse me, could you please call Georgie, my representative?" However, instead of calling him, she said something unbelievable. "And what business do you have with him? He's not free either. We both have limited time, you know." "I'm sorry, but I think you should refrain from wasting it." "No, that's not." I started to explain but stopped. I have no obligation to bother explaining to someone so rude. It's not even worth that effort. "Ah, forget it. Anyway, just call him for me, would you? He'll understand when you do." If I've said this much, anyone would normally infer that there's something going on. Yet, she still refused to put me through. In fact, she went on to disparage me in an even more sarcastic tone. Everyone says that, you know. People hoping for a loan, lying that there's an appointment when there isn't, insisting to just call them because they'll understand. What she's saying may well happen sometimes. But it's not up to her to decide whether to give a loan or not, and in the first place, I'm not here hoping for a loan. It just happens that Georgie, our representative, is also in charge of loans. Is that so? But I'm different. If you check, you should realize that, so I'm sorry, but could you please call him quickly? I'm busy too, you know. It's not like I'm asking for anything difficult. I just want her to call my representative. That's all I'm requesting. I can't understand why she's so stubbornly refusing to put me through. There's no way to know if you're really different or not, is there? I've seen plenty of people like you too. I can pretty much tell from how you're dressed. You're... Saying that, she twirled the ends of her long hair with one hand while looking at me. If you're going to lie, you could have at least borrowed some proper clothes. When all she had to do was put me through, I've been insulted and had my time wasted for over 10 minutes now. Then your ability to judge people is completely useless. And you're just a receptionist. Your job is to receive customers and put them through, right? It's not your place to decide whether to refuse them or not. Now, hurry up and transfer me. I couldn't help raising my voice. Even I had reached my limit. Then, incredibly, instead of putting me through, she hurled awful abuse at me. Those words made me decide on a certain course of action. Banks aren't charities, you know. We can't lend to people who don't have the ability to pay back. Trying to borrow money when you can't pay it back is the same as begging. Have you no shame ? Even so, treating a customer like a beggar is going too far. Those are not words she should be using to me, a customer, as a mere receptionist. Just who does she think she is? On top of that, she hurled even more abuse at me. Let me put it in a way you might understand. There's no money to lend to poor farmers like you. If you're working at a bank counter, there's a certain level of customer service you should provide to any client, regardless of who they are. It's unacceptable to look down on someone just because they're a farmer and treat them like a poor farmer. Admittedly, I did come in a pickup truck. And since I was planning to go back to the fields, I'm still wearing my work clothes without having changed. From that, she probably judged that I'm a farmer, but even so, that doesn't mean I should be scorned as a poor farmer. It's not like I caused her any trouble with my pickup truck or attire. I'm extremely busy, especially during this season. And yet, I finally managed to make time to come here. Later on, she would come to regret her behavior in this moment. As a result of this pointless back and forth, I decided enough was enough. Having had it, I simply said it out loud. Forget it, I'm leaving. Then I'm canceling the land lease contract. What? Wait, you're leasing land? What? What do you mean? I'll call the representative, so please wait. Suddenly flustered by the mention of leasing land, the woman panicked. I just assumed you were here for a loan consultation. If that's not it, then it's fine. Georgie, was it exclamation question mark? I'll call him right away. If it's about leasing land, you should have said so from the start. Now she's saying she'll call him right away, so I should wait, but I had no intention of listening anymore. After being treated this way, I have no lingering attachment to this bank. I can easily find other business partners elsewhere. It makes no difference to me whether I do business with them or not. I said forget it. I'm leaving. Tell Georgie the contract won't be renewed, it's over. Wait. Please wait. I'll call Georgie. Hey, wait. It's too late. Ignoring her calls for me to stop, I left the bank. As I drove my pickup truck out of the bank, my cell phone rang immediately. I pulled over to check, and the caller was Georgie from the bank. I heard you came by earlier. I was told you left. Did something happen? I was a little surprised that he hadn't heard anything from Wendy, but I replied calmly. Yes, that's right. I was treated very rudely at the reception. I intend to terminate our business relationship here. Could you please ask the receptionist, Wendy, what happened? She knows everything. Actually, I had been leasing land to the bank. The parking lot next to the bank is our land. The bank had asked us to sell it to them since there's no other land they can use for parking, but we didn't feel any immediate need to sell, so we've been leasing it to them with a contract renewal every 6 months. This time, I went to the bank for the renewal procedure. Not only that, but the profits from the fields, rental income from properties, all of our assets were entrusted to this bank. That's right, from the bank's perspective, I'm a valued customer. That's precisely why I even have a dedicated representative. Shocked by my sudden declaration of terminating our business, Georgie was astonished. What exclamation question mark Wendy did? I am terribly sorry. I will confirm with her and have her apologize, so please, if we could just talk. It seemed he really hadn't heard anything from her after all. Wendy probably didn't mention anything inconvenient for herself, and simply told him that she had called for Georgie, but I left. Without even understanding the situation. Please, I beg you. Georgie kept apologizing. I could practically see him bowing his head over the phone. However, he's not the problem. I had already decided not to forgive Wendy. No, it's fine. I've already wasted enough time there. I can't waste any more. I'm extremely busy today. If you'll excuse me. With that, I ended the call. I feel bad for Georgie getting caught up in this, but the receptionist is essentially the face of that bank. They're the first point of contact with customers, so I'll have to decline doing business with a bank where they judge customers based on their attire and vehicle and respond so rudely. My decision isn't simply because I was looked down upon as a farmer. They hired someone who judges people based on their clothes and occupation and put them at the reception desk. I can't trust a bank like that. Even after hanging up, there were several incoming calls, but I ignored them all. Leaving my cell phone in the truck, I went back to working in the fields. Just when I thought it was over, I was flabbergasted. Incredibly, in less than an hour, Mom Olivia showed up at the fields with Georgie in tow. What exclamation question mark? What's going on? Why is Georgie with you, Mom? According to Olivia, Georgie had suddenly stopped by the house. Georgie has been our representative since my parents' generation. It seems our receptionist was extremely rude to your daughter. Seeing how desperate he seemed, I decided to hear him out for the time being. He said he wanted to meet and apologize no matter what, so she brought him to the fields. I couldn't believe he'd get my retired mother involved. I questioned him in a slightly harsh tone. "Georgie, didn't I tell you earlier that I'm busy today? As you can see, we're in our peak season right now. I somehow managed to make time to come in the middle of that, only to be refused a transfer and spoken to rudely. I'm fed up. I can't spare any more time for you. Please leave. Ask Wendy about what happened." I thought he'd give up after that, but Georgie suddenly bowed deeply. "I am terribly sorry." Olivia hastily. "Oh my! Please stop that!" shouted. But he remained motionless. I was at a loss with him like that. "Even if you bow your head, I still can't do the impossible. I'm incredibly busy right now." This is not a lie or anything. I am literally very busy. It would be great if Olivia and Dad could help, but they both retired due to back pain, so that's difficult too. I can't ask other farmers for help either. They're all in their peak season as well. Then Georgie said something unbelievable. "I'll help." "What should I do?" Exclamation question mark. As he spoke, he was already taking off his suit jacket and rolling up his sleeves. What exclamation question mark? Even I was surprised by this. Certainly, I'm so busy that I could use Georgie's help. There are simple tasks too, so if he's offering to help, it would indeed be appreciated. But, as I hesitated, Olivia said, "Hey, Georgie is offering to help, so why not let him? Then, with that free time, you can listen to what he has to say." "Thank you very much. I'll do my absolute best, so please." He nodded eagerly, seizing the opportunity. All right then. I reluctantly accepted his proposal. But surprisingly, he was quite skilled. He harvested the vegetables and stacked them well. Thanks to him, a task I expected to take about 3 hours alone was finished in 2 hours. "Have you perhaps done farm work before?" To my surprise, he stretched his back, laughed, and told me. "Actually, my grandmother used to have a home garden. I often helped out when I was little. It's surprising how much the body remembers." Olivia brought us some tea, so as we took a break at the edge of the field, I explained the circumstances this time as promised. "Judging customers based on their clothes and vehicle, looking down on them, and hurling rude words. I can't trust a bank with a receptionist like that." Hearing that, he nodded deeply several times as if finally understanding. "I can't believe such a thing. Your anger is justified. That should never happen. I am terribly sorry." And then, actually, he shared the inside story. Apparently, Wendy is the bank president's daughter. She had initially been working at another branch, but after causing problems there, she was sent to this branch. Her work attitude was poor and the branch manager had warned her many times, but she never improved. By telling me these internal circumstances that normally shouldn't be disclosed to outsiders, his sincerity fully came through. And the reason why someone like her was at the reception desk. This incident is absolutely unforgivable. We will take firm action. First, could you please put the termination of our business on hold for the time being? Please judge based on our future response." Georgie spoke in a serious manner. I can't forgive Wendy, but I felt I could trust him. So I decided to give him a little leeway. The next day, the doorbell rang, and when I went outside, Georgie and Wendy were there. For some reason, they were both dressed in work clothes and wearing boots. "We caused you a great deal of trouble yesterday. I am terribly sorry. I've brought Wendy here again to apologize." "Come on, Wendy." Prompted by Georgie, Wendy bowed to me while averting her eyes. I was extremely rude yesterday. I apologize. Dissatisfied, with an attitude that clearly showed she was being forced to say it reluctantly. I cut her off. If it's not a sincere apology, I don't need it. Seeing this, Georgie scolded Wendy with a furious expression. You still don't seem to understand what you've done. I explained that the survival of this branch depends on her. Are you trying to drive this branch to closure ? I've known him for several years now, but this was the first time I saw him get angry. He was always smiling, so I thought he was a bit unreliable, but I gained new respect for him as someone who can properly say what needs to be said. Even Wendy couldn't help but uncomfortably avert her eyes at Georgie's harsh scolding. Still, she pursed her lips and argued back. I did hear that, but isn't that an exaggeration? They're just farmers, you know? They can't have that much power. Georgie yelled at her even more. Our parking lot is on her land. She came yesterday to renew that contract. If we lose our business with her, we lose our parking lot. Who's going to come to a bank with no parking in that location ? What he said must have finally reached that thick skull of hers. Hearing that, she turned pale. No way! Isn't that our land ? It's her land. And that's not all. Her family is the biggest landowner in this whole area. We're entrusted with the sale and lease of their land, contract farming, and the management of those assets. She's an extremely important customer for us. Even she was at a loss for words at this. He gave her a stern look, then turned back to me and made an unexpected proposal. Could you let her experience farm work as training during your busy season? I don't think you'll forgive us just for this, but please feel free to work her to the bone. For the first 3 days, I'll help out as well to supervise her. Hearing that, I couldn't help but smile. Since we're entering our peak season, even someone like her is better than nothing, and having Georgie there to supervise will be a huge help. It'll be a fitting punishment for Wendy too. But can she, who looked down on farmers, endure this job? As expected, Wendy started making a fuss at the words during the busy season. What? Not just 1 day ? I didn't hear anything about doing it for that long. That's impossible. As she hastily denied it, Georgie silenced her by saying, if it's impossible, it can't be helped. If we lose a customer like her because of you, your father, the bank president, will have to take appropriate responsibility too. Dad has nothing to do with this ? Using his connections to get her hired, then forcibly reassigning his daughter who caused more problems to another branch. If that daughter then drives that branch to closure, he'll inevitably be held accountable. That's not a responsibility a mere receptionist can bear. Of course, the bank president who used his position to assign and spoil his daughter also bears responsibility. Wendy must have finally realized the gravity of what she had done, as she started trembling while gripping the sleeves of her work clothes. I turned a beaming smile towards her. You'll be doing simple tasks, so it's fine even if you've never worked in the fields before. All you need is physical strength. Now then, shall we have you work to your heart's content? Upon hearing this, the word despair appeared on her face. That evening, gazing at the fields dyed red by the sun, I let out a satisfied sigh. Thank you. Thanks to you, Georgie, we were able to harvest much faster than I expected. No, I'm glad to be of help. We're the ones who caused you trouble. With his hard work, our work efficiency increased by 1.5 times. The harvest I had given up on finishing before next week's rain now looks like it'll somehow make it in time. Well, as expected, she wasn't of much use. Dig here. Carefully, so you don't damage the vegetables. Put more strength into it. Don't slack off. Relentlessly instructed by Georgie like this all day, towards the end, she was sitting on the ground, crying as she dug up the soil. She probably never had to do this kind of work before. Her face was covered in sweat and dirt, and mud was caked all over her hair. Now that the work was finally over, Wendy collapsed on the ground, seemingly unable to speak. With a wry smile, I looked down at Wendy, who was sitting on the ground covered in mud. Good work today. No, it's quite rewarding. I'll be back to help tomorrow too, Georgie said with a refreshing smile. Tomorrow too! ! In contrast to him, Wendy collapsed limply on the ground. And true to his word, Georgie brought Wendy to help the entire week. At first, she complained, but after a while, she seemed to give up and moved in silence. If she slacked off even a little, do your best to somehow get her to withdraw the termination of our business. If this branch closes, it'll be your responsibility. It's your own rude words and actions that caused this. Show some sincerity. She would be threatened. Georgie drilled farm work into Wendy during that week. And then, he lent her to us for a month under the pretext of employee training. Wendy, now bearing the future of the branch and even her father's future on her shoulders as she worked. I felt a little sorry for her, but if we didn't go this far, she probably wouldn't have understood the foolishness of her own actions. This training was quite effective. As I watched her digging in the soil, covered in mud and crying, I started to feel like I could continue the contract with the bank after all. At first, I was angry at her, but as I saw her going home exhausted and wobbling every day, my anger gradually subsided. Georgie must have anticipated this and planned this kind of training. He's quite the schemer himself. After the training, I went to the bank again and renewed the contract. Just as Georgie had planned. Seriously, I take my hat off to you. You knew it would turn out this way, didn't you? No, I just showed my sincerity to the best of my ability. Georgie processed the paperwork with a really nice smile. Wendy is no longer at the reception desk. After that training, we heard from the bank president that his daughter had resigned for personal reasons. Rather than personal reasons, it might be more accurate to say they made her quit before she could be fired. Apparently, just before hanging up, the bank president's voice could be heard cursing at his daughter over the phone. The branch manager was out, so I took the call. They say they were a close parent and child, but it was terrible. I wonder if their relationship as parent and child is over now. I guess that's all their relationship amounted to in the end, Georgie told me with a wry smile. It's good that we were somehow able to renew the contract, but if I had gone through with terminating our business, it would have caused the bank a huge loss. Not to brag, but just the assets we have deposited are worth that much, and if we stopped leasing the parking lot, the impact would have been immediate. Avoiding that wasn't because Wendy helped with the farm work, but because Georgie arranged it and moved my heart. Even if Wendy were to be reinstated, there's surely no place for her at that branch anymore. Incidentally, her father didn't come out of this unscathed either. It was good that he made his daughter quit, but it was too late. Through the branch manager, the circumstances this time and her past behavior were brought up at an executive meeting, and criticism from the other executives converged on the bank president. It even developed into a situation where he might have to resign. Since we caused you trouble, I'll tell you this in secret. Please keep it strictly confidential. The bank president might be replaced soon, Georgie said with a laugh. It's not hard to imagine how the bank president, who lost his job due to his daughter's foolish actions, will treat her. Thinking about Wendy's future, I muttered in my heart that it turned out to be a painful price to pay. Since then, there's been a small change in our fields. On weekends, an apprentice started coming to help. There was this strange person who had awakened to the joy of farming and wanted to help even just on weekends when he was off work, and I allowed it. Nothing beats a drink after work. Georgie, who for some reason was relaxing at our place. That's right, the apprentice is him. Since then, he's been coming to help almost every week, and when Olivia says, "Since you're here, why not have a meal before you go?" he invites himself into the house. How cheeky of him. But when I see him stuffing his mouth full of sandwiches, "This sandwich is the best treat of all," and puffing out his cheeks happily, I can't help but laugh too. It must be rewarding to feed him. Olivia is also enthusiastically preparing various meals just for him. "Quit the bank and come work for us. You can have a permanent position too." "What? No, I couldn't. Sharon would hate that." "Oh, I wouldn't mind, you know. Hard workers with guts are valuable." When I teased him, his ears turned bright red, belying his age. The day when the joke is no longer a joke might be near. "You're just a newbie, and you think you can lecture me? Who do you think you are?" Kelly, the hysterical female manager, screamed in a shrill voice, throwing an even bigger tantrum. I've been yelled at by her constantly, for the sole reason that I'm new. I've put up with it, thinking it's because I'm not good enough, but on this matter, I wasn't willing to back down an inch. "What's with that look in your eyes? You think you can get away with talking back to me?" No matter how you look at it, I think both Kelly and Martin, my coworker, are in the wrong here. But I knew that as things stood, there was no way these two would change their minds. "There are plenty of replacements for you," I snapped at her words. Either way, I don't have the confidence to keep working under Kelly. "I understand. Then I'll quit. I won't come into work starting tomorrow," I told Kelly, who was shrieking hysterically. I just can't forgive Kelly and Martin for this. It was the moment I vowed in my heart to get revenge on these two. My name is Misty Smith, a new employee who just graduated from college. I've loved dogs and cats since I was little. I wanted a job that involved dogs and cats in the future. The company I got a job at sells and wholesales pet products, and also provides pet sitting services. I was assigned to the pet sitting department. When the owners are away, we take care of their pets, and if the customers wish, we also help set up a good living environment for the pets. It's a convenient service for pet owners, so many customers who use it once become repeat customers. Even though I'm a new employee with little experience, I've gone to customers' homes several times. Making the customers happy and being able to interact with the dogs and cats I love. It's perfect for an animal lover like me, and I even feel like this job, which fulfills a childhood dream, is my calling. But I had a problem. It was my boss Kelly and my coworker Martin. Kelly is a one-man show type of person, with a hysterical personality, and when she gets stressed, she bullies new employees like me. And she is very weak to power. Martin is the son of the senior managing director. Since he's the son of an executive, no one says anything. Taking advantage of that, he slacks off without doing any work. Kelly never misses a chance to suck up to Martin. "Martin, you're working so hard. Misty, you come over here." Kelly called me over and scolded me for wearing accessories that are too flashy. Martin, who slacks off all the time, is working hard? I have a hard time understanding what Kelly is looking at when she says that. Martin gets praised even though he doesn't work, while I get scolded even for my accessories. How unreasonable can you get? I couldn't contain my dissatisfaction with the difference in treatment between Martin and me. Then Kelly deals an additional blow to me. You are hopeless no matter what I have her do. I wonder what she's even capable of, she said with a sigh. Sure, there are things I'm not good at since I'm new, but I don't remember doing anything I should be scolded for. Even I was getting discouraged, so one time I got up the courage to ask her, "What is it about me that's no good?" Then Kelly glared at me sharply and drew closer. She kept telling me that I shouldn't think I can get off easy just because I'm new. When Kelly gets into this mode, she'll lecture me for quite a long time. "You're the slowest learner I've ever seen." Those words really got me down. I don't think I'm doing a good job myself, but I never thought it was bad enough to be told that. I worked hard, thinking I need to put in even more effort than before. But that hard work went unrewarded, and every day Kelly would call me and bully me. My coworkers told me not to let it bother me, but I became obsessed with figuring out how to avoid getting scolded by Kelly. Then one day. That day, I was supposed to visit a customer's home with Martin. I had a bad feeling about being paired with Martin. We headed to the customer's house in a company car. When we arrived at the customer's house, we immediately got back to work. But before even 5 minutes had passed, Martin called out to me. "Hey! You finish up the rest!" Saying that, Martin got into the company car and went off somewhere. I was shocked and couldn't say anything. The customer who requested the service was out. I couldn't leave here either, so as Martin told me, I worked silently by myself. After a while, the customer came home. This completes our job, but I can't go home because Martin hasn't returned. With no other choice, I called Martin's mobile phone. It took several calls to get through, but I could hear a terrible noise on the other end where Martin was talking. "I'm in the middle of something good right now. Wait a little longer." Saying that, he hung up the phone unilaterally. Apparently Martin is at a casino. He pushed the work onto me and went off to play. Anger welled up in me, thinking there's no way this can be allowed. I desperately suppressed that emotion and asked the customer to let me stay a little longer. Of course, there's no way I could tell the customer that Martin went to a casino. It was 2 hours later when Martin came back. On the way back to the company in the car, I blamed Martin. Then a shocking statement came out of Martin's mouth. "Work is such a drag. That stuff is for a newbie like you to do, right?" Hearing those words, I saw red. "If it's that much of a drag, then why don't you quit?" I accused him, but Martin just raised his voice while lounging in the passenger seat. "I'm going to report what happened today to the manager." Even at my words, Martin just said, "Do what you want," not caring at all. Until we got back to the company, Martin's arrogant attitude didn't change, and all I could do was endure my anger with nowhere to vent it. When we got back to the company, Kelly immediately started yelling that we were late getting back. "Manager. Actually, today." When I tried to explain the situation, Martin said something that went beyond all expectations. "Well, this one's work was slow, so I was covering for her and that's why we're late." Incredibly, Martin blamed me for us getting back to the company late. I was so shocked I was dumbfounded, and Kelly screamed at me. "Hurry up and learn how to do your job. What are you thinking? Causing trouble for your coworkers?" Yelled at by Kelly, I came to my senses. "Wait a minute." I pleaded desperately to Kelly, who was giving words of appreciation to Martin. Martin, who snuck out during work to go to the casino, of course didn't do any work at the customer's house we just visited. Because he got engrossed in slot machines, Martin was 2 hours late to pick me up. I told Kelly the honest truth. But the words that came back from her were unbelievable. "Stop lying. What are you thinking? Trying to frame your coworker?" Those words froze me in place. And I realized that no matter what I said to this person, it would be pointless. Kelly continued to berate me after that. I liked this job and had been trying my best because I wanted to keep doing it forever. I gradually got angrier, wondering why I had to be told off to this extent. "Why do you think I'm lying and Martin is right, Kelly?" My words seemed to fan the flames of her anger. But no matter how angry Kelly got, I couldn't accept it. I couldn't stand being called a liar when I was telling the truth. "You're just a newbie, and you think you can talk back to me? Who do you think you are?" She threw an even bigger tantrum, screaming in a shrill voice. I've been yelled at by Kelly constantly, for the sole reason that I'm new. I put up with it, thinking it was because I wasn't good enough, but I wasn't willing to back down an inch on this matter. "What's with that look in your eyes? You think you can get away with talking back to me?" No matter how you look at it, I think both Kelly and Martin are in the wrong here. But I knew that as things stood, there was no way these two would change their minds. "There are plenty of replacements for you," I snapped at her words. Either way, I don't have the confidence to keep working under Kelly. "I understand. Then I'll quit. I won't come into work starting tomorrow," I told Kelly, who was shrieking hysterically. I just can't forgive Kelly and Martin for this. It was the moment I vowed in my heart to get revenge on these two. The next day, having quit the company, I was sitting around blankly at home. And I suddenly realized I had only been thinking about myself. What will happen to the customers I've been in charge of until now? I'm grateful that quite a few customers specifically request me for jobs. Disappearing without a word like this would be inexcusable to those customers. I decided that at the very least, I should let them know I quit and thank them for their kindness until now. So I went around to each customer's house, one by one, telling them I quit and thanking them for everything. Every customer told me not to quit, that they wouldn't request jobs anymore if I left. I never knew so many customers needed me. I was so happy about that, I couldn't help breaking down in tears in front of a customer. Thanks to the customer's warm reception, by the time I got back home, the sun had completely set. Alone, the treatment I received from Kelly and Martin came back to my mind, and anger welled up. But even though I vowed revenge, I couldn't think of how to go about it. As I was thinking about what to do from now on, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it was, I looked outside through the peephole and was surprised. There stood Kelly and the company president. Seeing that sight, I understood everything. Apparently, the thing I least wanted anyone to know had gotten out. "Misty, I heard what happened." The president who calls me Misty is none other than my dad. The company I worked at as a pet sitter was run by my dad. But I didn't want everyone to know I was the president's daughter. I liked the job, so I wanted to be recognized by my own merits. And I hated the idea of people going easy on me because I was the president's daughter. The only saving grace for me, who felt that way, was that my last name is Smith. Because it's such a common last name, no one realized I was the president's daughter. But now that I've quit the company, I don't care who finds out anymore. "We got complaints from customers who found out you quit." The president explained to me the circumstances that led him here. Apparently, the company got angry calls from the customers I visited to say goodbye that afternoon. The gist was, "Why did you let her quit? And if she's not there, I won't request jobs anymore." Since they were customer complaints, Kelly couldn't just sweep them under the rug, and they made their way to the president's ears. Upon learning of the situation, the president apparently demanded an explanation from Kelly. "I'm so sorry." Kelly, having become quite meek, apologized to me. But I can see right through her. Kelly may be apologizing, but it's only because I'm the president's daughter. Ignoring her, I gave the president a detailed report of everything Kelly had done up until now. "I will never forgive this. You're just working to cover your own ass, aren't you? Many employees have been reduced to tears and quit the company because of Kelly's hysterics. Some of them must have really liked the job and wanted to keep at it, like me. And yet, it's far too unreasonable for people who prioritize their own position above all else, or who put playing around over work, to be the ones who survive. The president told me to come back to the company for now, so I went back to work starting the next day. When I arrived at the company, my coworkers came running up to me. Everyone was worried about me and said they wanted to help. My coworkers were dissatisfied with Kelly and Martin, just like me. I looked around, but didn't see Kelly or Martin anywhere. Apparently Kelly was ordered by the president to stay home until her punishment was decided. And Martin was supposedly at a customer's house. As I was talking about that with my coworkers, the president showed up. I reported Martin's misdeeds to the president, who had been worried about whether I would come to work. As if taking a cue from me, my coworkers also aired their grievances about Martin one after another. I see. Then I'll have to check for myself. The president quietly said that after listening to my coworkers' appeals in silence, then told his secretary to bring the car around to the company entrance. He took me with him to the customer's house where Martin was supposedly at. We looked around after arriving on site, but sure enough, the company car was nowhere to be seen. The president instructed the driver to go to the casino in this neighborhood. Upon arriving at the casino, we easily spotted the company car in the parking lot. And we immediately found Martin inside the casino as well. I can't believe he's really here, I muttered without thinking. The president, who entered the building with me, was struck speechless, his expression full of anger. Well, of course. No matter if he's the senior director's son, there's no way it's okay for him to skip work, drive the company car around, and play at the casino. What are you doing? Martin was engrossed in a slot machine and didn't even notice us approaching. He must have gotten a machine that was on a hot streak, so he cared even less about his surroundings. Martin, who turned around in a great mood when the president tapped him on the shoulder, couldn't immediately grasp the situation and stared at the president for a while with his mouth hanging open. Huh? Why? The president was furious. Even I had never seen him make such a scary face. Don't make me ask again. I'm asking you what you're doing here. Martin flinched when the president yelled at him and stood up from his chair. Oh, I'm on break right now, so. Cowed by the president's intensity, Martin stammered out that answer. I was amazed that he could tell such a blatant lie at this point. Don't lie! Martin trembled at the president's shout, which was loud enough to drown out the noise in the store. Must be nice, pushing your work onto your coworkers while you play to your heart's content. Urged by the president to go outside, Martin followed us out powerlessly. Get rid of that naive idea that you'll be forgiven because your father is an executive at our company. I'm calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow. You better be there. Outside the store, the president yelled this at Martin and told me to attend that board meeting as well. Told that by the president, Martin hung his head. Seeing Martin hang his head in front of me, I vowed in my heart that now was the time for revenge on him and Kelly. And the next day. The time for the emergency board meeting the president mentioned was approaching. When I headed to the conference room, the executives had already gathered. Looking around the conference room, I spotted Kelly and Martin. Yesterday Martin had been hanging his head like that, but Kelly must have whispered to him. You'll be fine, your dad will protect you. Because he had an expression like this was no big deal. I was appalled by how rotten they were to the core, and then the president arrived and the meeting finally began. At the start of the meeting, the president explained why he had called the executives together on short notice. Then the senior director immediately spoke up, saying, "Is this really something that warrants an emergency board meeting?" and showed his stance of defending them. This senior director is the father who has been enabling Martin to do whatever he wants. He must think his own son is too precious, after all. Ignoring the senior director's words, the president addressed the executives gathered there. "I believe this will lead to a major loss for the company, but what do you all think?" The executives all nodded as they listened to the president's words. That's only natural. No one with common sense would say, "It's fine, isn't it," about Martin neglecting his work to play slots. After explaining the full story, the president asked Kelly to explain her words and actions up until now. "I didn't know she was the president's daughter." At Kelly's excuse, clinging to the executives, the president seemed to reach the peak of his anger. "The president's daughter or the senior director's son, what does that matter?" The president's voice resounded through the conference room. "It seems you're not cut out to be a leader." When the president said that, the senior director opened his mouth as if to defend Kelly. Then the president revealed a shocking truth. Apparently, the senior director and Kelly are in a relationship. Rumors had reached the president's ears that something was going on between them, and when he looked into it, it turned out to be true. Even I couldn't hide my surprise at this. "I thought it couldn't be, but for it to actually be true. I don't intend to interfere with your private lives, but I need you to show some discretion at the company." At the president's words, the senior director, who had been defending his son and Kelly, suddenly turned pale and fell silent. Kelly is single, but the senior director is married. If this got out, not just within the company but to his family as well, there would be hell to pay. Having splendidly silenced the senior director who kept interjecting, the president asked Martin for an explanation as well. Realizing he could no longer rely on his father, Martin made a childish excuse, saying, "The president and I just happened to find him and he doesn't always do this." I couldn't stay silent in the face of his terrible lack of remorse. "Even if it was just by chance, do you think that makes it okay?" Martin glared at me. Even Kelly, standing next to Martin, was giving me a terrible look. Do they think it's my fault they ended up like this? To give the two of them, who showed no sign of shame, their just desserts, I decided to have the executives watch a certain video. It was footage from a pet camera. A pet camera is a small camera installed indoors so pet owners can check on their pets in real time via smartphone while they're out. After I quit the company, when I was going around to say goodbye and thank the customers, I confided my reason for quitting and was given this, being told it might come in handy. Projected onto the screen I had prepared was Martin neglecting the pet and fiddling with his smartphone. Faced with this irrefutable evidence, Martin's eyes were still darting around as if searching for an excuse. Next to Martin, Kelly was frozen stiff. "Kelly, even after seeing this, you still think Martin is doing a good job?" "Martin, was this just by chance too?" I've been tormented to no end by these two. To clear away those feelings, I challenged them here today and unleashed all my pent-up emotions on them. "Are you going to say I'm lying again? If you hate the job that much, then quit right now." Unable to argue against my words, the two of them hung their heads. "The company doesn't exist for your sake. Why should people who genuinely want to do a job they like have to quit the company because of your unreasonable words and actions?" The two of them, who had been glaring at me until a moment ago, were red-faced and looked displeased. The executives watched them with cold expressions. I had no intention of borrowing the power of my father, the president, but I'm grateful that by him holding this board meeting, I was able to vent the feelings I had bottled up toward Kelly and Martin. Actually, before the meeting started, I had a small camera planted in a spot overlooking the conference room through the president. Seeing the two of them, who had been so high and mighty, being cut down to size, my coworkers who had been tormented by them must feel relieved as well. They were being blamed by the executives, starting with the president, and asked how they intend to take responsibility. They hung their heads like deflated balloons, seeming like completely different people from before.
Don't you have anything to say to the people you've hurt up until now?
Prompted by the president, Kelly and Martin hung their heads deeply as if in resignation and said, "I'm very sorry," in apology. It was the moment when the dissatisfaction I had felt for so long was finally cleared away. A few days after the board meeting was held. Before his punishment from the company came down, Martin quit. I heard from my coworkers that he's not even job hunting and spends every day at the casino. Kelly was demoted and now works under employees with less experience than her. Then one day, when I passed by the former Kelly in the company, she nodded to me but then bit her lip and turned away. Her pride is as high as ever, but everything that happened is her own fault. I hope that while being scolded by the younger executive who became her boss, she receives retribution for all the unpleasant experiences she put others through. Several years later, I was called by the president and asked this. "Why do you want to hide that you're the president's daughter?" Precisely because it's a job I love. I want to be evaluated as an individual without being seen through a special lens. I honestly conveyed my feelings to the president. "Isn't it enough? You're this adored by the customers. We should be grateful." For a while now, thanks to a valued customer who always requests me as their pet sitter introducing me to an acquaintance who's a dog breeder, word of mouth spread that you can trust Misty for sure, and I got busier every day as my customer base grew. Always thinking about how to make the customers happy, my efforts on the job were recognized, and soon after that I was promoted to manager. It was the talk of the company as an unprecedented major promotion, but according to my coworkers, no one questioned HR, saying it's because she's the president's daughter, right? I'm happier than anything to be recognized as an individual, just as I had hoped. Feeling happiness and fulfillment in being appreciated for a job I truly love, I want to keep working hard so I can continue living satisfying days. I'm Jessica, a 38-year-old office worker. I have been married to my husband, Brandon, for 5 years now. However, we've been struggling to have children. Being the eldest and only son, Brandon has always been under pressure from his mother, Chloe, to have a boy since we got married. These days, few people care about the gender of their children, and either a son or daughter can be an heir. Brandon himself doesn't care about the gender and says there's no rush to have children. But Chloe sees me as an adversary and always tells me when Brandon's not around. "A woman who can't have children is useless in this family. If you can't have one, you might as well leave." Her words have hurt me deeply. "I'm sorry, Chloe, but honestly, your words are very pressuring. I wish you wouldn't say such things." I finally gathered the courage to express my feeling to Chloe. But she didn't understand it at all and became even more oppressive, telling me not to defy her. I was shocked. I never expected such words from her. At first, I endured it because she's Brandon's mother and I didn't want to cause any trouble. But enduring Chloe's sarcasm while undergoing fertility treatments was mentally taxing, and my health started to decline. Realizing I couldn't hide it anymore, I confided in Brandon. Furious, Brandon sternly warned Chloe, which stopped her surprise visits to our apartment for a while, but she continued to hurl insults daily through WhatsApp. Then one day, I found out I was pregnant at the fertility clinic. The first sight of the fetal ultrasound filled me with indescribable emotions. When I showed Brandon the ultrasound at home, we both cried tears of joy. But our happiness was short-lived as I remembered a significant problem. Chloe. Telling her about the pregnancy would surely lead to her frequent visits, insisting that pregnancy isn't an illness, telling me to move around, or bragging about her own experiences. The doctor advised me not to overexert myself until a heartbeat is confirmed, so I was torn about what to do. After discussing with Brandon, we decided I should stay at my parents' house for a while. If I'm at my parents' house, even if I'm not feeling well, my parents are there, and Chloe won't make a surprise visit to my parents' house. It's close to my workplace and Chloe wouldn't barge in there. I called my mother right away, explaining about the pregnancy in Chloe, and decided to return home for a while. Brandon drove me to my parents' house, where they were overjoyed about my pregnancy. After greeting my parents, Brandon returned to our apartment. Being back at my parents' house, away from Chloe, brought me peace of mind. Soon after, morning sickness hit, and I spent days in bed. At work, my pale face raised concerns, and my boss suggested me to take a break, which I gratefully accepted. Many women at my job, including those who have undergone fertility treatments, understood my situation. Their support was comforting. Other than severe morning sickness, my pregnancy was uneventful, and the baby grew healthily. Feeling the first kicks was indescribably touching, and I lovingly caressed my belly every day. In fact, Brandon and I had already planned to move to a bigger house once we had a child. The reason is, our apartment was getting old, and while it's fine for just the two of us, it felt inconvenient for raising a child. We had set various criteria like proximity to stations, hospitals, and shopping facilities, and were searching accordingly. Then, Brandon suddenly sent me a photo. It was of a new high-rise condominium near the station. The area around the condo had everything needed for living, like commercial facilities and hospitals, and it was close to nurseries and schools, making it convenient for kids in the future. Completion is expected next month, and I casually entered a lottery for it. Surprisingly, we won. If you don't like it, we can just transfer it to someone else. Jessica, you can see it and decide. Hearing this, I immediately opened their website, was taken aback by the stylish design of the rooms, and exclaimed,
What?
The latest system kitchen, a bathroom with a sauna. Moreover, the unit we won was on the top floor of the 30-story building. The view from the window was amazing. I was a bit hesitant about the price, but Brandon works at a top-tier company, and with our salaries, we could afford it, so I decided to sign the contract for this condominium. Of course, I couldn't keep the purchase of a new high-rise condominium from my in-laws. I talked about it through Austin, my father-in-law. Austin said, "It's impressive that you young ones bought a condominium. If you need anything, I'm here to help." However, Chloe was not happy about this. When she found out we bought a high-rise condo, she was upset that we weren't living with her. Then, an incident happened. A week after moving in, Chloe suddenly visited. As usual, she went around the room complaining, but I entertained her with a smile. Then, suddenly, Chloe said she dropped her keys near the emergency stairs.
What? Why did you drop your keys by the emergency stairs? Don't tell me you climbed all the way up here?
I said, but apparently, she had dropped them while checking where the emergency stairs were, just in case. I went to the emergency stairs instead of Chloe to get the keys. At that moment,
I'm taking this house.
I was suddenly pushed from behind, lost my balance, and fell down the stairs.
Ouch! Help, somebody!
Unable to stand due to pain and shock, I suddenly felt warm water flowing around my feet. Realizing I had probably broken my water, I thought about calling an ambulance, but since I had hit my head hard, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Brandon was there, looking worriedly at me.
Jessica, are you okay?
Brandon asked, visibly shaken, as I woke up.
Where am I? What happened to me?
I was still confused from just waking up and had a fuzzy consciousness from the head injury. When I touched my stomach, I felt something was off. My stomach, which was big until recently, had shrunk. Realizing this, I felt the blood drain from my face.
Hey, why is my stomach like this? Where's my baby? Where did my baby go?
I asked Brandon. Then Brandon quietly began to speak. The baby in your belly is. The moment I heard those words, I couldn't stop my tears and began crying out loud in the hospital room. Someone on the same floor found me, noticing the emergency staircase door left open. When they went to close it, they found me collapsed and hurriedly called an ambulance. Brandon asked why I approached the emergency stairs, so I explained everything about my interaction with Chloe. I was mentally harassed by Chloe when Brandon wasn't around before, which had once caused me to fall ill. Because of that, Brandon instructed me to always carry a voice recorder. Of course, I started recording the moment Chloe showed up unannounced. After listening to the voice recorder, it was clear that Chloe was the culprit. Brandon was furious to learn that his own mother had done such a thing. Then, a call came in on Brandon's mobile phone from a relative. On the call, Brandon heard a shocking fact. It seemed Chloe, thinking the baby had died, was telling relatives while crying. "Oh, my poor sweet grandchild has gone to heaven. It's so sad. It's because Jessica, even though she's pregnant, went out riding a bicycle." She was making up absurd stories. However, Austin, who was present, had heard nothing like that from either me or Brandon and was looking at Chloe in utter disbelief. It seemed impossible that Austin didn't know anything about it. And the idea of a woman in her 9th month of pregnancy riding a bicycle. That's why the relative called Brandon. It was unbelievable. Then Brandon, taking the voice recorder, said, "Jessica, let me borrow this for a bit. Can you leave the rest to me?" He then left the hospital room. As Brandon left, my parents arrived. After I explained everything, they were both shocked and angry. I decided to trust Brandon and wait in the hospital room for the outcome. Meanwhile, Brandon met with the relative who had called him. It turned out Chloe was gathering relatives at her house, explaining the incident. Of course, her words were nonsense, and she was just trying to make herself look innocent. Some relatives believed Chloe and wept, while others were skeptical and viewed her with suspicion. Suddenly, Brandon burst in, causing Chloe to look at him in surprise. "Huh? Brandon, why are you here? You were supposed to be with Jessica. She needs you. It's so sad about the baby. I was looking forward to its birth," Chloe said, even feigning tears. At that moment, something snapped in Brandon. "Enough, Mom. I know everything. You pushed Jessica down the emergency stairs," he said, pulling out the voice recorder in front of the relatives. Everyone was shocked to hear the conversation recorded so vividly. Who heard the voice could not hide their surprise. "Is this true?" Austin, whose face turned pale due to the shock, asked Chloe. "No, that's not true. This is nonsense. I didn't go near the emergency stairs." Even after hearing the recording, Chloe insisted she hadn't done it. However, there was a security camera nearby, and its footage would surely show me and Chloe entering the emergency stairwell. When Brandon mentioned this, Chloe, who had been speaking fluently until then, turned pale and began to tremble. "How awful. We're family, aren't we? How dare you shame your own mother like this?" Chloe clung to Brandon, insisting she was innocent and that it was Jessica who had slipped on her own. Even if that were true, leaving someone who had fallen and not helping them is questionable. However, the relatives who had already heard the voice recording did not believe Chloe's story. Instead, they urged her to go to the police and turn herself in. "It's not me. I'm not the bad one. You understand, don't you? You know I'm not the kind of person who would do this. Prove it in front of everyone." Chloe desperately appealed to Austin to affirm her innocence. But no one believed Chloe's story anymore. Soon, the police arrived, and from the audio and the subsequent security camera footage, it was clear that Chloe was the perpetrator. She was taken to the police station and arrested. The reason she did this was because the baby was a girl. Chloe had always been fixated on having a grandson, and when she found out the baby in the womb was a girl, she was disappointed. She thought that by pretending this baby never existed, she could try for a boy next time. When I heard this from the police, my head went blank with shock. Despite all that had happened, the baby grew healthily in an incubator and was discharged after 2 months. A few days after coming home from the hospital, Austin visited our apartment to apologize for the incident. He said that he and Chloe had divorced, that their house was sold, and he was going to move back to his family home. It was sad that the house where Brandon had grown up was gone, but since Austin wasn't to blame, we told him he was always welcome to visit. We regularly let Austin see his granddaughter after that. He adored his first grandchild and played with her with such kindness in his eyes. 3 years later, our second child, a boy, was born. Our daughter, now a big sister, couldn't wait to take care of her brother and was always by his side. Watching them was heartwarming, and every day was filled with happiness. But that happiness was disrupted by a visit from someone. The doorbell rang repeatedly, and when I checked the monitor, to my surprise, it was Chloe. I thought I would never see her again, and seeing her brought back memories of that day, making me feel nauseous. "What do you want now?" "I have no intention of seeing you again. Please leave," I said, but Chloe wouldn't listen. Apparently, Chloe had fallen ill, struggling daily with her health and finding it difficult to go to the hospital without a car. She had divorced Austin, and their house was now just an empty lot. She had no one else to turn to for help. Shockingly, Chloe knew I had given birth to a boy. She had apparently seen us in town, noticing Brandon holding our son. To Chloe, it was the long-desired grandson. She was determined to live with us and make the boy fond of her. "So you finally became a proper woman, giving birth to a boy. When you were pregnant with a girl, I was so disappointed in you. But now that you've had a boy, let's forget the past and live together, shall we?" For a moment, I doubted my own ears. Live together after all that? Impossible. "What are you talking about? After what you did, living together is impossible. Leave now, or I'll call the police." Unfortunately, Brandon was at work at this crucial time. In distress, I immediately called Austin. He was supposed to visit the apartment today to see his son and daughter. With trembling hands, I called Austin. It turned out he was already near the apartment, so he hurried over. When Austin arrived, Chloe exclaimed in surprise. We couldn't argue in the entrance of the apartment building, as it would disturb others. But I had no intention of letting Chloe, whom we had cut ties with, into our apartment again. I gave Chloe an ultimatum, telling her I would call the police if she really didn't leave. Realizing her wish wouldn't be fulfilled, Chloe started to create a scene at the entrance and began arguing with Austin. Troubled, I contacted Brandon at work. After hearing the situation, Brandon called the police, and they soon arrived at our apartment. The police, understanding the situation, took Chloe away in a police car. As the commotion was in a conspicuous place, several residents of the apartment witnessed it. I felt sorry for causing inconvenience to many people. Later, after Brandon returned home, we discussed the situation with Austin and decided to move. As long as we lived here, Chloe would surely come back. We couldn't risk something happening to the children next time. Besides, Austin, though he said he had gone back to his family home, was living alone since his parents had passed away. Our daughter liked Austin and had previously expressed a desire to live with him. Austin is a kind person, and leaving him alone at his age worried us. When we proposed living together, Austin was very happy, despite everything that had happened. Afterwards, we bought a used property in the next town. Though it was second-hand, the house itself was very nice, and the surrounding environment was good too. Living in a high-rise was nice, but raising children in a place surrounded by nature seemed better. Right after moving, my daughter and Austin went to a mountain to hunt for beetles. Seeing them so happy made me feel that deciding to live together and choosing this place was the right decision. Once a month, we invite my parents over, and we all enjoy a home party, leading a happy life. Meanwhile, according to someone I was close with at the high-rise apartment, Chloe, undeterred, visited the high-rise again. But when told we had moved and she couldn't find out where, she left disappointed. If it weren't for what happened, Chloe might have been here, feeling the children's growth with us. Well, it's a natural consequence, but still. Later, I heard Chloe reluctantly returned to her hometown, rented a small apartment, and now lives a lonely life, working part-time in cleaning. When I looked at the sender's name on the letter delivered to my mailbox, it was written Violet.
Violet!
I blurted out without thinking. I hurried back to the living room. Why now? Why did I receive a letter from Violet? There's no use just thinking about it. I carefully opened the letter. There were several writing papers in it. Taking out only the writing paper, I continued reading while imagining a Violet's face. To Mom. It described the circumstances that had led Violet to her current situation. And at the end, these words were written. Please take revenge on my husband Andrew for me. That's my last request. Violet. As I finished reading, a single tear fell onto the table. Feeling a sense of powerless anger, I clenched the letter in my hand. At the same time, I resolved to take revenge in place of Violet. Andrew, you were only pretending to be a good person. It's my fault for not realizing it. So, I'll commend you for deceiving me until now. But that ends here. You made a fatal mistake. For taking away my dear daughter, I'll make you regret it until the end of your life. I bit my lip and reached for my mobile phone. My name is Scarlett. I work as an insurance agent at a major insurance company. After losing my husband early, I worked hard for my daughter Violet. It was often difficult, but thinking of Violet somehow gave me the strength to keep going. Then, about half a year ago, Violet told me she was getting married. Violet's at that age now. Violet had just turned 24. Now that I am 53 years old, I was feeling my age more and more. But there's no time for rest. Marriage is expensive, after all. Violet's wedding is next month. No time to rest. I wanted to help her for the wedding expenses and prepare a celebration. Maybe soon, I would have grandchildren. It was hard, but also incredibly joyful. But misfortunes come in times of happiness. That day, the phone call I received was just the thing. Violet's. The caller was a police officer. With a slightly strained voice, he informed me that Violet had passed away. Stunned, I let my mobile phone slip from my grasp. Her wedding was coming soon, why did Violet? Those thoughts raced through my mind. About a week later, I received an unexpected letter from Violet. I didn't know how Violet had died until I read this letter. Violet's letter began with a meeting her future husband, Andrew. I heard that Violet and Andrew met at the confectionery shop where she worked. Indeed, Violet loved making sweets. Probably because her best friend's family owned a confectionery shop. She got interested after enjoying their delicious treats and started making her own. Putting that aside, Violet went to a local culinary school after high school to study confectionery formally. She seriously learned confectionery skills there, and she got a job at a confectionery chain with several stores in the state. Nice to meet you. I'm Andrew, I'll train you. I've got a bit more experience, but feel free to talk to me. Andrew, a bit older, became Violet's supervisor when she started her job. Turns out, Andrew was the son of the president of the confectionery company that owned the shop where Violet worked. Incidentally, whenever Violet was scolded by other pastry chefs, Andrew quickly defended her. She's new, there's no need to be so harsh. Of course, everyone knew Andrew was the president's son. So, when he said something like that, no one could oppose him. On the other hand, Violet found Andrew, who defended her, to be very reliable. Soon, a trust developed between them, and it was only a matter of time before it turned into romantic feelings. Eventually, about a year after she started working, Andrew confessed his feelings to Violet. That's how they started dating and gradually deepened their relationship. But Violet wasn't just focused on romance. She diligently worked as a pastry chef. During work, she followed the instructions of Andrew and her superiors, and after hours, she practiced to improve her skills. Sometimes Andrew would join her for practice. It seemed those moments were important in strengthening their bond. By the time they started dating, Violet had become a competent pastry chef. But all of this was part of Andrew's scheme. Violet only realized this after they started dating. Time passed, and a few months ago, Andrew approached Violet with a proposal.
Violet, a sweets exhibition will be held in 3 months, right? I need to discuss something about that.
The sweets exhibition? The one at the department store downtown? I heard popular confectionaries will be selling their treats there.
Yes, that one. Apparently, there's been a vacancy, and suddenly our shop is participating.
Andrew spoke with a hint of confusion.
Violet tilted her head. Our shop is popular, right?
Is there any problem?
We have to come up with a new dessert. We also need to create next season's new items.
I see.
Violet understood.
Confectionery shops often introduce new items each season. For instance, treats for events like Valentine's Day or Christmas are needed.
We have our wedding next month. I can't take on more. That's why I wanted to hear your ideas, Violet.
Andrew clasped his hands together, making a pleading gesture. Violet sighed softly.
Can't be helped.
I'll bring my recipe notebook tomorrow.
That would be a great help.
Make sure you let everyone know it is my idea. That's all they talked about at that time. But the next day, an incident occurred. After work, Violet took her recipe notebook and headed to the kitchen.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
She entered the kitchen. But Andrew was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he's still working? Being the company heir must be busy. Thinking this, Violet decided to wait for Andrew. While looking through her recipe notebook, she suddenly felt someone's presence behind her. Andrew? Were you working? Violet turned around. But Andrew wasn't there.
Oh? Violet? What are you doing here?
Ah, Mr. Carter. It was Mr. Carter. He worked for the confectionery company but wasn't a pastry chef. He was more of an office worker, handling tasks like accounting. It seemed he came to lock up.
Do you still have something to do here?
Yes. I'm here to help Andrew with his work. Andrews. Oh, I see. Mr. Carter laughed unpleasantly. Was he thinking something bad? Sensing this, Violet's expression soured. Suddenly, Mr. Carter shouted. Even if you're dating the boss's son, I can't overlook such behavior from an employee. I'm not. I was just... Quiet. Don't make excuses. Mr. Carter advanced towards her. In a reflex, Violet threw him her recipe notebook. Ah. Mr. Carter covered his face and crouched down. Andrew came there. What's going on? I heard a loud noise, Violet. Are you okay? What happened? Andrew. It's just... Violet explained everything to Andrew. But, in reality, nothing had happened. Mr. Carter had just found that Violet and Andrew were meeting up. He jumped to unsavory conclusions on his own. Violet, upset by such bizarre suspicions, wore an annoyed expression. This displeased Mr. Carter, who attempted to reprimand her.
So you threw Mr. Carter the recipe notebook, and he ended up like this. Yes, I'm sorry.
Violet apologized. Meanwhile, Andrew checked on Mr. Carter. The area hit by the notebook was turning red. But luckily, there were no serious injuries. I'll report this to the president. You'll be fired immediately.
That's not fair.
Shut up. Brace yourself. Mr. Carter shouted angrily. Then Mr. Carter hurried out of the kitchen.
What should I do, Andrew? It's okay. I'll handle it. But if it gets reported to your father,
our relationship might be opposed. Violet was most afraid of that. Don't worry. I'll always protect you. Andrew, leave it to me. Later, this incident reached the president's ears. But Violet faced no punishment. It was because Andrew had intervened. Andrew protected me. Violet thought so. Their relationship seemed to grow even stronger. But all of this was also part of Andrew's scheme. A few days later, Violet would come to realize the whole truth. After the kitchen argument, Andrew said something to Violet.
I feel bad asking this, Violet, but can you keep quiet about providing the idea?
Why?
You know, because of the matter of Mr. Carter.
On the day of the incident, Andrew was alone in the kitchen. While Andrew was working on a new creation, Mr. Carter came in. There was an accident during Andrew's work, and a cooking utensil hit Mr. Carter's face. Andrew wanted to make it seem like that's what had happened. Reluctantly, Violet agreed.
Sorry, Violet. It's actually your recipe. I'll return the notebook later.
It's okay. You coordinated everything to protect me.
Well, yeah. If that's the story we're going with, Mr. Carter agreed to it.
Andrew spoke of the effort it took to align their testimonies. Violet felt deeply grateful to Andrew for his efforts on her behalf. However, a few days later, Violet, who had stayed late to clean up, was about to leave after changing. Passing by the office, she heard Andrew's voice. Andrew's still here. I should say hello. But as she was about to enter, she froze at Andrew's words. And that's how it went. Thanks to you, Mr. Carter.
Mr. Carter, what does that mean?
Pondering, Violet listened closely to Andrew's voice. Soon, she heard Andrew's laughter. Then, his true feelings came out.
Violet's just a convenient tool. Now that I've got her recipes, I don't need her anymore.
Violet was stunned.
Was I deceived?
She covered her mouth, trying hard not to make a sound. But she couldn't stop the tears from flowing.
That recipe is really good. It's a waste to let that woman keep it.
From there, she could only listen to the truth she didn't want to hear, in Andrew's gleeful voice. He had ordered other pastry chefs to scold Violet. Then he would intervene, earning Violet's trust. He also set up the situation with Mr. Carter, making Violet feel indebted and trapped. And in the confusion of that moment, he was glad to have stolen Violet's recipes. Andrew said that. And then he added,
if she tries to escape, I'll just confront her with a shocking truth.
Andrew smiled unpleasantly. What does he mean? Violet wondered as Andrew answered himself.
It's about fraud. She's already complicit in it without knowing.
Andrew sneered. At that moment, Violet's mobile phone fell from her pocket. It made a sound as it hit the floor, and Andrew noticed the phone. Violet could see this through the gap in the door.
I have to get away,
she thought, but her legs wouldn't move. Andrew quickly spotted Violet. He looked at her with a menacing expression. Were you listening?
Well, it doesn't matter. If you try to run, I'll just accuse you.
Andrew's lips curled into a smirk. Violet felt an intense fear of that smile. After that, Violet, unable to escape from Andrew, led a life dictated by him. She was also boldly made to help with the fraud he mentioned. However, Violet, being inherently honest and kind, couldn't endure such a life. Eventually, about a month later, Violet was found on the first floor of her apartment. There were no witnesses, but a passerby had heard a loud noise. When they checked, they found Violet lying below her room. According to the police, it's likely Violet did it herself. However, Andrew's laptop was found nearby. Perhaps Violet intended to expose Andrew's fraud by doing so. But the police examined the laptop and found no noteworthy data. I had suspected Andrew, who lived with her, from the moment I heard of the incident. However, on that day, Andrew was not at home. He was out of state for work. So, Andrew couldn't be the culprit. I had no choice but to accept that. Afterward, along with Andrew and his parents, we completed Violet's funeral. Even after everything ended, I remained in a daze. I couldn't bring myself to do anything. If only my husband were here, maybe he could have helped ease the loneliness.
Violet, why?
That was all I could mutter. I felt powerless. For several days, I cried, thinking that. Then, a week passed after Violet's death. I had to accept the reality of losing Violet. Just as I was beginning to come to terms with it, a letter arrived. When I looked at the sender's name on the letter delivered to my mailbox, it was written Violet.
Violet!
I blurted out without thinking. I hurried back to the living room. Why now? Why did I receive a letter from Violet?
There's no use just thinking about it.
I carefully opened the letter. There were several writing papers in it. Taking out only the writing paper, I continued reading while imagining a Violet's face.
To Mom.
It detailed the circumstances that had led Violet to her situation. The truth Violet penned ignited anger in me. It meticulously described how she was deceived by Andrew, her recipes stolen and forced into fraud. And finally, there was this line written in the letter.
Please take revenge on Andrew for me. That's my last request, Violet.
As I finished reading, a single tear fell onto the table. I clenched the letter, overwhelmed by a sense of powerless anger. At the same time, I resolved to take revenge on behalf of Violet. Andrew, you were only pretending to be a good person. It's my fault for not realizing it. So, I'll commend you for deceiving me until now. But that ends here. You made a fatal mistake. For taking away my dear daughter, I'll make you regret it until the end of your life. I bit my lip and reached for my mobile phone. I quickly arranged for a taxi. Violet's letter had an address written on it. There must be something important there.
Violet. I should go here, right?
Clutching the letter, I jumped into the taxi. Heading to the address. It was a local bank. According to Violet's letter, there seems to be something in a safe deposit box. I showed my ID to the staff and explained the situation. I also showed the bank card and key for the safe deposit box. The staff then led me to the safe deposit box. Violet had apparently told them I would be coming. I opened the box in the room I was led to. Inside were documents and a notebook.
This is...
I quietly read on. The documents were written by Violet. They detailed the methods and content of the fraud, and the people involved in it. The notebook was Violet's recipe notebook, containing recipes of products sold at Andrew's shop.
Violet, you did all this.
Even just from this, I could tell Violet's meticulous nature. Tears flowed as I thought of Violet. But I couldn't just sit and mourn. I quickly put the documents and notebook into my bag. Then, I noticed some jewelry. It was a heart-shaped pendant with a yellow sticky note attached.
Treating it so carelessly, you wouldn't do that, Violet.
Muttering, I carefully picked up the pendant. Then I saw the words on the sticky note. Instantly, I was shocked and disturbed. I clutched the pendant tightly.
Violet, I'll definitely take revenge. Just wait.
With renewed determination, I left the bank. I headed straight to a local confectionery shop. It was the family shop of Wendy, Violet's close friend. Wendy, whom I had seen at Violet's funeral, was at the shop front.
Hello, Wendy.
Violet's mom? About the other day. Wendy hugged me, and I hugged her back. There's something I want to talk about. Do you have a moment? Wendy looked towards the back. A man, presumably Wendy's father, nodded. Then, please come this way. Wendy led me to the back of the shop. The back was a residence. I was taken to the living room. As Wendy served coffee, I spoke abruptly.
Actually, I received a letter from Violet.
From Violet? Wendy was surprised and confused. Read it first. We'll talk after that. I handed Violet's letter to Wendy. Wendy read it silently, with great concentration. Eventually, she, like me, was in tears. Then, she handed the letter back to me.
Thank you. I'll give this back to you first.
So, what do you think?
We can't forgive him.
I won't. Wendy clenched her fist. I felt relieved knowing Wendy shared my feelings. Will you help me then?
Yes. But what should I do?
You're Violet's best friend, so you know about this, right? I showed her Violet's recipe notebook from the safe deposit box. Wendy immediately affirmed. This was in the safe deposit box, but the moment I saw the contents of the box, it was as if someone had whispered an idea to me. I decided to use it as part of my plan for revenge against Andrew, as Violet's wish. I explained the plan to Wendy. Then, I entrusted Violet's recipe notebook to her. "Can you do this for me?"
For Violet's sake, yes.
Wendy strongly agreed.
That's the first step prepared.
I felt a bit relieved. Then I quietly stood up and shook hands with Wendy. "Thank you, I'm counting on you." Saying this, I left Wendy's place. I headed to another location. It was a branch of the confectionery shop where Violet used to work. The shop was quite far from the one where Violet had worked. I spent a lot of time getting there. Upon entering, I asked a woman who looked like a part-time employee. "Excuse me, is Mr. Carter here?" The woman looked puzzled. Then I added, "My daughter worked at another shop and was helped by Mr. Carter." I showed her the employee card given to me by Andrew after Violet's funeral. The woman immediately smiled. Soon Mr. Carter came out from the back. Seeing my face, he turned pale. He recognized me as Violet's mother from the funeral. "Can we talk outside for a bit?" If you refuse, you know what will happen, right?" I smiled at him, deliberately gentle. Thanks to that, Mr. Carter agreed readily. We moved to a nearby park, and Mr. Carter immediately apologized.
"I'm so sorry. I was threatened too."
"What are you talking about?"
I mean,
Mr. Carter, without being asked, started confessing everything he had done. He was only approached by Andrew under threat, and he had no choice but to call out Violet. He wasn't involved in anything else. It was all Andrew who dragged him into evil. He never thought Violet would take her own life. Mr. Carter apologized to me, crying,
apologies won't change anything. Violet will never come back.
I couldn't help but raise my voice. Mr. Carter closed his mouth, frightened. Realizing I said too much, I took a deep breath. Then, with a stern look, I asked Mr. Carter, "If you're willing to apologize, will you do me a favor?"
Yes.
"Then, please testify about this incident. And don't say anything to Andrew. Understood?" Once confirmed, Mr. Carter agreed, though fearfully. Afterward, I had Mr. Carter testify everything. I recorded all of it and even let him write and sign a statement of his testimony.
That's the second step done. Now, Wendy, I'm counting on you.
I muttered softly, watching Mr. Carter's dejected figure return to the store. After a while, I received an invitation from Andrew. A sweets exhibition. It was the invitation to the very sweets exhibition. Andrew didn't know I was aware of the truth. So, the invitation boldly included these words. "We'll be showcasing sweets Violet praised highly. Please come for Violet's sake." I almost tore it up in anger. But the preparations would all be for nothing by doing so. I managed to restrain myself and waited for the day of the sweets exhibition. Day after day. I watched the calendar. Finally, the first day of the sweets exhibition arrived. I went to the venue with Violet's employee card on my chest. Upon entering, Andrew greeted me. He approached with a dubious smile, offering a handshake. "Scarlett, I'm glad you could make it." "Yes." "Violet was looking forward to it, wasn't she?" "Yes." "I've prepared my masterpiece for this occasion." He guided me to a display filled with magnificent cakes and chocolates. I asked Andrew with a forced smile, "Which ones did you make?" "This time, I made chocolates. Valentine's Day is coming up, after all." Andrew pointed to chocolates in the center of the display. Stylishly decorated chocolates. But these were made from Violet's recipes. Thinking that made me seethe with anger. Then, a woman's voice came from behind. "May I interview you?" I turned to see a woman holding a file. Apparently a magazine journalist, with a camera. Andrew and the woman talked. After a while, the woman tilted her head, puzzled. "Excuse me, are you sure you made these?" Andrew was taken aback by her words. Then he retorted with a sneer.
Of course I did. What are you talking about? But I saw similar ones at another store. What? What do you mean?
Andrew raised his voice. Several guests in the venue turned to look. The woman continued.
The explanation and design are very similar. That's impossible. Which store is that?
Andrew's voice grew louder. The woman, though scared, pointed to a distant location. Andrew rushed off. And I quickly followed. Soon, we arrived in front of a certain store. There, Wendy was standing by the storefront. Wendy nodded slightly when she saw me. Then she addressed Andrew. Long time no see.
It's you. You stole our shop's recipes.
Stole? That's not true. Wendy smiled. Meanwhile, Andrew, red-faced, raised his voice.
Then what's this? It's almost identical to our product.
He pointed to chocolates lined up. Almost identical to those in his shop. Then Andrew pointed to a sign at the storefront and shouted.
And this? Doesn't melt easily even in warm places. What's this about?
It's our newly developed product.
Don't joke with me. This is exactly the same as the unique method I devised.
Andrew's voice stirred up murmurs among the bystanders. But Wendy, undisturbed, retorted. That's just a coincidence. But if it's the same, please stop using it at your shop. What did you say?
This is made using a patented method developed by my father years ago. Patented method?
Andrew's face turned pale. Actually, Violet's recipe used that patented method. But Violet had no intention of infringing the patent. It is because she planned to sell it with Wendy.
This is a recipe Violet came up with for our future shop together. That's... You stole the recipe from Violet.
Wendy's words silenced Andrew. Clearly losing his composure, Andrew was questioned by the earlier woman.
What about it? Did you steal the recipe? No, Violet was our employee, Anne.
Andrew started making inconsistent excuses. But nobody believed him. Eventually, Andrew was unable to withstand the surrounding gazes, and he fled the scene. I quickly followed Andrew. The woman from earlier also followed. Returning to his shop space, Andrew began hurriedly packing up. Apparently, he intended to act as if nothing had happened. But I wouldn't allow it. I approached Andrew.
Wait! We're not done talking. So, Violet provided the recipe. What's your complaint? I have one. What you did wasn't just that, was it? Just that, what do you mean?
Sweat beaded on Andrew's forehead. Knowing this was a critical moment, I raised my voice.
Your shop has been evading taxes. Ah.
Andrew instinctively covered his mouth. The surrounding gazes intensified on him. I continued, calmly detailing Andrew's actions.
First, you kept a separate record of pre-ordered products, not accounting for them in sales. I don't know what you're talking about. Moreover, you falsified inventory records for raw materials. That's how you evaded taxes, right? I don't know anything about that.
Andrew attempted to deny loudly. I then produced a copy of the documentation Violet had compiled.
Violet detailed the method here. Look at this.
I scattered the documents on the spot. Several people rushed to pick them up. They began comparing and discussing among themselves. Soon, the journalist questioned Andrew.
What about this? According to these documents, her story seems true.
Andrew was silent in response to the journalist's question. Soon, similar voices arose from the audience.
I work in accounting, and this is clearly fraud. It's definitely tax evasion.
Faced with these accusations, Andrew's patience finally snapped.
Shut up! None of this concerns you. I didn't do anything. This can't be evidence.
Andrew's outburst silenced the crowd. In the midst of this, I took out my mobile phone. Then, I played a certain audio recording. Listen up. Mark the inventory as less.
But that would mean... Don't argue with me. You can't escape this now.
The voices of Violet and Andrew echoed in the venue. People from afar also started to gather closer. The recording continued. What about today's pre-order receipts?
I destroyed them. They were cash payments, convenient for fudging the sales.
That's again?
Shut up. If we paid taxes properly, we'd never make any money.
The recording ended with those words from Andrew. I glanced and saw Andrew's face had turned ashen.
This recording was in a pendant Violet had. It was an IC recorder. That heart-shaped one?
Yes.
It was an IC recorder. Violet left it as irrefutable evidence.
Andrew crumbled. Then, a security guard arrived with a police officer. The officer looked at Andrew and me, then asked Andrew, who was almost collapsing.
I've heard quite a bit. Is it true that you were evading taxes? No. That is... We'll ask you more thoroughly at the police station. For now, would you please come with us?
The officer spoke calmly to Andrew. But his eyes were not kind. I handed the officer Mr. Carter's testimony. Then I told him about Violet's suicide.
I understand. We'll investigate that as well.
The officer said, casting a stern glance at Andrew. But Andrew had no strength left to argue. Afterward, Andrew was arrested on charges of tax evasion and other offenses. Violet's case was also thoroughly investigated. However, it wasn't that Andrew directly caused Violet's death. In the end, he was only charged with assault for Violet's case. Nevertheless, the arrest had a significant impact. In just a few months, Andrew's father's confectionery company was driven into bankruptcy. Naturally, all the operating stores were closed. The shop where Violet worked became a rented space. I don't know what will happen to Andrew's sentencing, but I hope he reflects on his actions. After Andrew was taken away by the police, Wendy distributed the chocolates to the people at the venue. These chocolates were designed by my best friend. While handing them out, I wished Violet could have seen this. Especially the customers smiling as they tasted the chocolates. Violet would have loved to see that. Tears welled up in my eyes. But I had no time to cry. Because the sale of those chocolates had been decided. We want to name the product Violet. Because it's a light violet color, and most importantly, it was Violet's idea. Wendy spoke with a smile. Then she added, "Would you write the product tag for us? We want to display it with Violet's photo at the store." So, for the first time in my life, I started working on creating a store display tag. I hope Violet would like it. Speaking to Violet's smiling photo, I reached for a light purple-colored pencil.
How could you do this? Sullivan bought my favorite pizza for tomorrow's discharge celebration. And you threw it in the trash. That's terrible.
Rosie, my mother-in-law, said this as she glared at me intensely. I also wanted her to enjoy the delicious pizza to her heart's content. But that was an impossible wish.
If you say so, please look inside then,
I said with a stern face. Rosie looked at me curiously and then slowly opened the box. Right after, Rosie's body started to tremble. My name is Cindy. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. I met my husband Sullivan through a friend's introduction, and we've been married for 2 years. Both Sullivan and I love our jobs, and after discussing it together, we chose not to have children. Friends with children had sometimes worried about the pressure from the mother-in-law. But to me, that concern seemed unnecessary. Of course, there's a reason for that. The apartment we live in is about a 15-minute drive from my in-laws' house. Rosie lives there alone since her husband passed away 5 years ago due to illness. When I first met Rosie, I told her, I want to continue working even after getting married. Rosie really liked that about me.
It's wonderful to be an independent woman. Oh, I'm relieved. I was a bit worried Sullivan might become just an ATM. I'm glad he married someone so capable,
she said with a beautiful smile. I quickly grew fond of Rosie, who was talkative and cheerful. My husband and I moved to our current home a year ago. It was a quick decision based on location and rent because we were busy with work. Because of that. Hey, Cindy. This faucet is old, shall we talk to the real estate agent about it? Sullivan suggested to me, pointing at the dripping faucet. Oh, that. I'll contact Mariah about it. Oh. Sorry, I have to go early this morning. I'm leaving now. Mariah is a friend from my university days. I coincidentally met her working at a real estate agency, and she was very helpful in our search for a place. She seemed uninterested in marriage, enjoying her single life. Since reuniting, Mariah and I would have lunch during breaks, and sometimes Sullivan would join us at a pub after work. I loved those times, but Sullivan started coming home late more often as he became responsible for training new employees. Recently, you have been working a lot of overtime, I remarked, to which Sullivan sighed. There's this new employee, Emily. She's slow to catch on, and it's been tough. That sounds hard, I replied while we continued our peaceful married life. Then, we received news that Rosie had been involved in a traffic accident and was hospitalized. Rushing to the hospital, we found her lying in the bed, looking pained. I was walking home from shopping when a car suddenly crashed into me. Can you believe it? And now I have to stay in the hospital for a month. Oh no. Tomorrow was supposed to be my monthly pizza day, Rosie lamented. She had been looking forward to her monthly pizza outing with friends at a local pizzeria. Despite having a broken arm and leg, she seemed in good spirits, which was a relief to us. As Sullivan was busy with work, I made sure to visit Rosie as often as I could. However, she would become gloomy during meals. It's no use, I can't taste anything, she said, apparently having lost her sense of taste and smell due to the accident. But the doctor said it might be temporary. I tried to cheer her up, and she smiled. Right. I hope it gets better before I'm discharged. I want to enjoy pizza again. We laughed together at her playful remark. I kept Sullivan updated on her condition. But my frustration peaked as he continued to use work as an excuse not to visit her.
Hey! I get you're busy with work, but this is too much, isn't it? It's not even a busy season at your company, right?
I questioned, bewildered. He sighed deeply. Like I've said before, it's tough training the new employee, Emily. Don't make me repeat myself, I countered.
It's been half a year since you started training her? If Emily is that incompetent, maybe she's beyond your help. You should talk to your boss.
As I pressed on, Sullivan ruffled his hair. Enough. Don't meddle in other people's business. He then retreated to the bathroom. Other people's business? Knowing he couldn't win the argument, Sullivan always escaped to the bathroom whenever things got inconvenient, waiting until my mood improved. This was one aspect of him I disliked even before we got married. Despite the strained days, I always visited Rosie on my days off. Though her taste hadn't returned, and she often looked disheartened, the news from the doctor that she would be discharged the following week brought her great joy. A few days later, I entered her room as usual and noticed Rosie in high spirits.
Just now, Sullivan came to visit and look. He brought me pizza from my favorite place.
Seeing Rosie so happy, my face turned pale. I quickly snatched the box from her and threw it into the trash can. Rosie was shocked by my sudden action, but she raised her voice.
How could you do that? Sullivan bought my favorite pizza for tomorrow's discharge celebration. And you threw it in the trash, that's terrible.
She glared at me fiercely.
But you can't eat this, not this one,
I insisted.
Just give it back to me,
Rosie demanded.
If you insist, please look inside,
I said, and she slowly opened the box. I had a story to tell her. After I finished, her body began to tremble. The next day, I went to a certain place.
What are you doing here?
I saw several men and women standing in front of me. One of them, noticing me, exclaimed,
What?
In a barely audible voice, he started.
But why? I mean, yesterday.
I confronted him.
Did you think I knew nothing? What are you planning to do with your family home, Rosie's house?
As I raised my voice, Rosie, standing next to me.
Answer me, Sullivan.
She shouted. The truth is, I had lied to Sullivan the day before.
Rosie was supposed to be discharged tomorrow, but she got terrible food poisoning. The hospital just called to say her discharge is postponed. Did she eat something strange? I'm worried.
Hearing my words,
That's terrible. Well, she gets to rest a bit more in the hospital, huh?
Sullivan replied, seemingly pleased. That's when I became certain.
By the way, did you properly take out that pizza from the fridge for this morning's trash?
Sullivan sometimes brought home gifts like snacks from clients. About a week ago, I found a large box in the fridge. I didn't pay much attention, thinking it was just another snack. But after a few days, I started noticing something odd in the fridge every time I opened it.
What? What's this smell? It stinks.
I searched for the source and realized it was coming from that box. It had a fishy and unpleasant smell.
Wasn't this a snack?
I confronted Sullivan when he got home.
Oh, I forgot. That's a pizza someone gave me. The boss ordered pizza for lunch and treated everyone, but I didn't have time to eat.
Thinking back, Sullivan's explanation sounded prepared.
Make sure you take this out tomorrow on trash day.
I told him before heading to the bedroom. The next morning, I went to the kitchen, sleepy-eyed, and saw the same pizza on the table. Approaching it, I grimaced at the foul smell. When Sullivan woke up a bit later,
Hey, did you leave this out all night?
I asked him.
I left it out because I thought I might forget to take it out. Eating that would definitely upset someone's stomach.
We shared household chores, and taking out the trash was his responsibility. Looking at his laughing, I left for work with a look of disbelief. That day, during my lunch break, I went to visit Rosie. But when I entered her room, I was shocked. The pizza that had been giving off a foul smell just that morning was right there in front of me. Worse, Sullivan had brought it. It was a week-old pizza, left out at room temperature during the heat of summer. Anyone would know eating it would be disastrous. Panicked, I grabbed the box from her and threw it into the trash can. Rosie scolded me, not knowing anything, but after I explained, she slowly opened the box. It looked normal at first glance, probably because it had been in the fridge, but it was slightly discolored. Rosie, unable to smell it, said sadly,
If it had stayed like this, I might have eaten it. I can't taste anything anyway, and above all, it was something Sullivan brought for me. I wouldn't have doubted it.
She looked at the pizza with sad eyes. I then said to Rosie,
Rosie, this may not be the right time to say this, but he is having an affair. He's not visiting you because he's caught up with his mistress.
At my words, she looked up and exclaimed,
What? An affair? He must be joking. I hate men who cheat.
I thought that also Rosie perhaps had some issues in the past. With that in mind, I decided to enlist her help. Sullivan must have been shocked. His mother, supposedly hospitalized, was standing next to his wife, both glaring at him furiously.
This is my house. What do you want in my home?
Rosie's voice echoed loudly.
Calm down, Mom. Please, lower your voice.
Sullivan pleaded. Then, the couple with him, looking confused, turned to the real estate agent accompanying them.
What? Isn't this house for sale? We came here to preview it today. Can someone explain what's happening?
They glared at the real estate agent.
That's because,
Then,
could you explain to us, Mariah?
I asked the agent. Sullivan and his friend Mariah couldn't find an excuse and looked down.
This foolish son seems to have concocted some scheme, but this is my house. I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave,
Rosie said, and the couple, who had been considering buying the in-laws' house, left angrily, feeling their time had been wasted.
Let's go inside and discuss this in detail,
Rosie said, still glaring at them. Actually, I had noticed their affair a little while ago. Embarrassingly, I had been making a big mistake all along. Sullivan's company is on my way home from work, and one day, as I was returning, my mobile phone rang. His message saying, "Stuck with overtime again because of the newbie's mistake," made me sigh deeply. By then, I was already suspecting his infidelity and thinking about how to gather evidence. Once, when I was near his company, I saw a group of 3 young women coming out. They looked like fresh recruits. Watching them, I smiled, reminiscing about my own early days.
"Emily's the star among the newbies,"
one of them said.
"It's been years since a newcomers project got approved."
I saw McGuire looking pretty jealous. Another added. I froze. McGuire was my surname, and Sullivan's too. Was this Emily the one he was having an affair with? As they praised her, and she modestly replied, "Not at all." I was struck by her innocent appearance. Then I did something unexpected. "Excuse me, I overheard you. Are you from the sales department?" "I'm Mrs. McGuire." Before I was about to say so, they quickly started defending him, thinking I had heard them speaking ill of him. "Ah, are you McGuire's sister?" "We're always grateful for McGuire's help."
"You know, McGuire is amazing. I often see his wife picking him up at the entrance. They always leave holding hands."
Their words confused me. "Eh? Oh, is that so? I heard he was Emily's mentor. He's not causing any trouble, is he?" I decided to pretend to be his sister. Emily replied, "Me? My mentor is someone else. McGuire isn't mentoring anyone." She seemed genuinely honest. "He is a bit shy, so please keep our meeting a secret from my brother," I said before parting ways. What was he doing? Who was he cheating with? Unforgivable. Unable to investigate myself due to work, I hired a detective. When shown the photos of the other woman, I felt dizzy. It was Mariah, my friend, not some stranger. There were photos of her and Sullivan arm in arm entering a hotel, and others of them at what looked like Mariah's place. They were meeting almost daily. My love for Sullivan vanished. In Rosie's house, facing the 2 sullen figures, I said,
"So, it's troublesome if Rosie gets discharged with the house viewing planned, huh? And to think you tried to feed her old pizza. Are you insane? You could have endangered her life."
I ranted, and Mariah, crying, pleaded,
"Don't blame him. It's my fault. I fell for him. He's not to blame."
Sullivan gently comforted her. What am I even witnessing here?
"Yeah, Mariah. It's your fault. I heard about your bad reputation. You wouldn't have been interested if he wasn't my husband."
Mariah, who had been crying, suddenly froze.
"What? What rumors?"
I told the flustered Mariah.
"About your multiple divorces and how they were all from stealing friends' husbands, and now you're working at that real estate company to pay off the alimony because your last husband found out about your cheating."
I said it with disdain. I heard these stories from a college friend when I first suspected Mariah of being Sullivan's affair partner. In college, her nickname was Crusher. Known for snatching boyfriends but losing interest once she got them. A type of person I could never understand. Sullivan looked genuinely shocked upon hearing about Mariah's multiple divorces, but he said, "Even so, my feelings haven't changed. We truly love each other. I'm sorry for trying to sell the house secretly. It was her idea, to pay you alimony when we divorce." Was my husband always this foolish? His naivety gave me chills. He turned to Rosie. "Mom, let's sell the house. It's not a bad deal. I was going to convince you once we found a buyer. I thought you'd give it to me as a living inheritance. Please." Rosie, trembling with anger, yelled,
Like father, like son, both no goods. You saw how much I suffered when Dad cheated. How can you do something so terrible?
She hit him with her crutch, furious. I wanted to laugh at the sight but held back. Eventually, Sullivan and I divorced. I slammed him and Mariah with all the evidence and demanded compensation from both. Mariah's request to lower the amount because we were friends was laughable. Friendship discount on alimony? Are you stupid? Should I double it instead? I couldn't understand nor wanted to understand her twisted logic. Furthermore, I heard that Mariah got into legal trouble at her company for trying to sell properties illicitly and was sued. Burdened with debt and facing a difficult time, she was rumored to be in a bad state. Of course, she was fired from her company. Serves her right. And as expected, Sullivan was dumped the moment we divorced. He even came begging for reconciliation, waiting for me at my workplace. Before consulting the police, I went somewhere. I'm sorry to intrude. I regret to inform you that I've divorced. I felt I owed you the news since you've been so supportive. I visited Sullivan's company to report the divorce to the executive vice president who had spoken at our wedding. Shockingly, Sullivan hadn't reported our divorce and was still wearing our wedding ring. Of course, mine was no longer on my finger. Sullivan stood there, mouth agape, unable to say a word. Emily and her friends realized.
So, she wasn't his sister? Wow. McGuire is so toast.
They laughed at the situation. A few months later, he relegated to a depopulated area. I hope he never returns. If he does show up again, I'll go straight to the police. I've been in occasional contact with Rosie since then. Thankfully, her sense of taste and smell fully recovered without any lingering effects. She was too scared to eat pizza for a while, but recently,
I finally had pizza with my friends after a long time.
She happily told me. As for me, I'm still dedicated to my work. Frankly, I've had enough of marriage for now, so I'm studying for qualifications to advance my career. My current goal is to eventually move back to my hometown and buy a spacious house to live with my parents. My name is Amy, and I turned 30 this year. Currently, I'm working in sales at an apparel brand, living a busy but fulfilling life. Today is our college reunion. Now that we're all around 30, everyone has taken their own path. Some are busy with work like me, others are married, and some even have kids. It's been years since we've all been able to gather like this.
Amy!
As I enter the venue, a friend spots me and waves, calling out. The gathering had already started, and my friends were huddled together, drinking.
Hey, you must be tired, work's been busy, huh?
Thanks, yeah. And wow, so many people turned up. We toast and catch up, sharing recent news and reminiscing.
Long time no see, Amy.
Turning around to the voice behind me, there was Estella, who used to be in the same club as me. It's been a while. She was always cute and charming, very popular, and I don't recall ever seeing her without a boyfriend.
I'm engaged now.
Really? Congratulations. Looking at her left ring finger, I saw a large diamond sparkling. A bit surprised by the ring, I expressed my congratulations, and she smiled.
What about you? Not married yet?
Not yet. I'm not in a hurry. Oh, that's so sad. I could tell the friend next to me was getting irritated by her words, but I subtly kept my emotions in check. It didn't bother me, and I didn't want to spoil the reunion with negativity. I'm enjoying my work for now. But you're already 30, right? The other side, knowing what was coming. She had always been like this since college. Always wanting to feel superior to others, looking down on them.
My husband is super elite, you know. Look, he wanted me to have this ring.
That's great for you. You were so pretty and popular in college. Maybe it's true what they say about beautiful women being too picky and missing out on marriage. I never intended that. The ultimate happiness for a woman is to marry a wonderful husband, but maybe you'll never have that chance, lol. She laughed mockingly, looking at me. Should I introduce you to a man? You must be lonely. I'm fine. I'm just too busy with work to think about marriage. Are you just pretending? You probably need someone else to make it happen for you. She left the place triumphantly, saying she would contact me again. I felt a wave of exhaustion, and my friends around me expressed their concern. She hasn't changed at all. Always wanting to be better than others, never listening. Yeah. What will you do if she contacts you about introducing a man? It's a joke, right? She's too busy for that. Even if she does, I'll decline. At that moment, I was optimistically thinking. That being engaged, she must be busy herself. But the very next day, she started sending me messages to introduce men. Of course, I refused every time. Dealing with that was a hassle in itself. One day, after finishing work and stepping outside the office.
Amy. What?
Waiting in front of the office was her. Seriously. You only ever send refusals, so I waited here. You haven't even been replying lately. What kind of men I prefer, what's wrong with the guys she's been trying to set me up with? These questions had become increasingly persistent recently. If I showed any preferences, I'd probably be accused of being too picky at 30, so responding had become a burden. I get it now. What do you get? That you haven't realized the joys of marriage and can't be proactive about it. So, I'm going to explain all the great things about marriage to you. With a face that showed no ill intent, she smiled. Being in front of the office, I couldn't just dismiss her coldly or ignore her. I had no choice but to lead her away, so I invited her to a restaurant. We entered the restaurant, but instead of focusing on the meal, she went on and on. About the wonders of marriage. How much she's loved. How rich her fiancé is, and even though they're only engaged, she has lots of money to spend freely. How she's a winner and I, unmarried, am a loser. How pitiful I am. And how she's doing all this for me. She sighed as she said this. See, if you stay the way you are now, you'll never find someone. That's why I'm helping you. No. I don't need it. I want you to be happy too, like me. Her smiling face seemed a bit scary. Despite her continued insistence on the joys of marriage, I firmly declined being set up with men. She seemed unsatisfied, but eventually, she seemed to give up on that. Still, she insisted on talking in person. Better than being ambushed in front of the office again, I thought, so I agreed. Amy. Sorry to keep you waiting. Then let's go. She pulled my arm and we started walking. I thought we were heading to a restaurant, but no.
Where is this?
I took care of the arrangements, let's go. She forcefully led me to a venue for a mixer, a place for men and women to meet. She confidently tried to check us in, so I quickly pulled her arm and stopped her. Somehow convincing her to step away from the venue for a moment. I grabbed her shoulder.
Hey! This is troubling. I can't do this.
She, being engaged, shouldn't be at such a place either. When I stopped her, she frowned. I came reluctantly, just for your sake. I'm only accompanying, so it's fine.
Wait. I have a boyfriend. I'm just waiting for my work to settle down before getting married. So you don't need to worry about me.
Maybe it was wrong of me to stay silent until now. I never intended to publicize that I had a boyfriend, but because of that, we ended up here. Sorry. Oh, you don't need to pretend so much.
Excuse me.
If you hate parties that much, let's go home today. That's why you're still single. She laughed and left. I just didn't know what to do anymore.
Good work today.
It's late again. Looking at my watch, it's already past 11 p.m. Getting off at the nearest station, I hurried home, but heard footsteps behind me. When I slowed down, the footsteps also slowed. When I sped up, they sped up too. Was I being followed? The thought sent chills down my spine, and I broke out in a cold sweat. In a panic, I took out my mobile phone and made a call. As the ringing continued, I prayed for a quick answer, but then someone grabbed my shoulder from behind. Amy, right? I turned around in fear to see a smiling man. A stranger I didn't recognize. How did he know my name?
You must be mistaken.
What's wrong? We've been messaging each other every day, haven't we? I've been waiting for you at the nearest station. The man said, smiling. I was too confused and scared to even speak, having no idea what he was talking about. Then, Amy. I heard a hurried voice calling my name. Turning around, there was my boyfriend Dennis, running towards me with his mobile phone to his ear. In surprise, I looked at my phone and saw it was still on a call. I must have left it on after dialing. Dennis.
Sorry I'm late.
He had been waiting for me at home, but when he got my call and sensed something was wrong, he rushed out to find me. I faced the bewildered stranger with Dennis. Excuse me, this is my girlfriend. But how do you know her? As I stood there scared and Dennis guarded, the man seemed confused. He claimed to have met me on a dating app.
I don't use those.
I firmly denied it.
Could you show us the messages if you have any?
The man showed his phone, and sure enough, there were messages under my name. But they weren't from me. Even Dennis, looking over my shoulder, could tell. However, the photo registered on the app was indeed mine. A deep sense of fear overcame me. Who would impersonate me and why? Then it hit me, there was one person I could think of. I explained to the man that the messages were not from me. Realizing our obvious distress and wariness, he seemed to understand and left. He hadn't intended to act like a stalker. I was too busy to meet easily. I often returned home late. And that if he waited at my nearest station, he might get to meet me. He was led to believe these messages by the impersonator. I called the person who came to mind, and she answered immediately.
Estella?
Hi, Amy, what's up?
I need to confirm something.
Yes?
You haven't been impersonating me and messaging men on a dating app, have you?
I hoped I was wrong, but she just laughed off my question. Why, how did you know? I was planning a surprise for you once I found the right person.
Surprise.
She said she was messaging on the dating app on my behalf, as I'm too reserved and lazy to do it myself. Her complete lack of malice in doing so was what made it even more terrifying.
Please, just stop. It's none of your business.
But you must be feeling so pitiful, surely you want to be like me? She seemed genuinely convinced of this.
She's really crazy.
My boyfriend, who had been listening to the call, muttered in disbelief. Sorry for dragging you into this. No, it's fine. He was relieved that I wasn't alone when this happened. But what should I do? I never expected someone to be this unreasonable. The fact that she seemed so innocuous made it even more problematic.
Why is she so obsessed with you? I think it's because she liked a guy I dated back in college.
I heard about it long after we broke up. But why would she do this now? If she resented me, wouldn't she want me to stay single forever? She's engaged and supposedly happy, about to marry a wealthy guy. Then, maybe you should start investigating these things. My boyfriend suggested.
What?
Look. He showed me the screen. It was the homepage of the dating app we had seen earlier. Click here for profiles earning over $100,000, screening required. It led to another app. And what was the name of that party? He asked. Searching the name on my phone.
I knew it.
It was also for people earning over $100,000. Meaning she was trying to set me up with men earning less than her. Such a devious tactic. I blurted out. Then,
I know this might not be the right time to say this.
Yeah. As I was stressing out, he turned to face me, looking serious. And a bit nervous, making me nervous too.
How about we get married?
His unexpected proposal took me by surprise.
Married? I've been thinking about it for a while. But you were busy with work. Now might be the right time.
Getting married might stop her obsession. At least, it would put an end to her unwarranted meddling and setting up random meetups. But using you like that. And getting married for such a reason.
I want to be used by you. I'm also seizing this opportunity. Maybe this timing will get you to marry me,
he said with a shy smile. A month later, I called her.
Amy, what's up today? I wanted to talk and thank you.
Walking together, she tilted her head in confusion. Eh? For what? Here. Everyone's already gathered.
Everyone?
Leaving the bewildered Estella behind, I entered the restaurant. Everyone had already gathered.
Sorry for making you wait, you could have started without me. We couldn't start without the guest of honor.
I thanked my friends and took a glass from them, handing one to Estella too.
Guest of honor. Congratulations on your marriage. Congrats.
Everyone raised their glasses and started to drink. Only Estella was confused about what was happening. Maybe I had been a bit cruel.
I've decided to get married. What? How?
She was shocked.
That time you registered me on that app without my permission. That dangerous mistake. My boyfriend said he couldn't leave me alone after that. It was also the right time as my work was settling down.
I showed her the engagement ring we had picked out together.
I'm sorry I didn't explain properly earlier. But I didn't think you'd believe me if I just told you.
That's why I decided to invite her here. She trembled, falling silent. Amy, well done.
Dennis.
Then, my boyfriend arrived. He had been invited as it was a celebration of our engagement. Nice to meet you, I'm Amy's fiancé. We've been living together for a while. Thanks for giving us the push towards marriage. He smiled. Perhaps a bit too pointedly. I nudged him with my elbow to calm him down.
You've been living together?
Yes, he's been supporting me since I was studying for the bar exam. I want to repay his kindness, but he's too busy with his work. I'm already getting plenty of support from you.
Bar exam?
Yes, I'm a lawyer. He smiled.
And your salary is?
Well, it's decent. He was confident.
But...
Estella showed us her engagement ring.
It's a coincidence, I'm marrying a lawyer too.
She seemed upset that I was happy, but didn't want to admit defeat. I didn't like her sudden marriage announcement. I could sense her feelings. Oh, a fellow lawyer? Which firm? He asked.
It's on the business card.
She fumbled for her card, flustered. He checked it and frowned. Never heard of this firm. Just like he did with the app and party incident, he quickly searched on his phone. Oh? It's not here. The search only brought up similar but different names. And also, he continued, lawyers get a registration number when they become one, and in this state, it's usually 7 digits. This card has 10 digits. So, this number doesn't exist. Estella's face went pale.
You must be kidding me.
No, I'm clearly not. He replied calmly.
No, that can't be true. I've always been on dates at the top floor restaurant of a hotel, enjoying full-course meals, and I even received 100 roses on my birthday. This ring is a 2-carat diamond, after all.
She frantically called her supposed fiancé. Hey, I'm at a friend's engagement party, and they're saying there's no record of your lawyer number or your law firm. From her mobile phone, a loud angry voice shouted,
Shut up, woman!
Followed by the sound of the call being disconnected.
That can't be!
She collapsed onto the floor, sitting down without regard for her surroundings. My boyfriend then added his piece.
I have something to tell you, right here, right now. I love Amy. Her strengths and her weaknesses. I respect her dedication to the things she loves. Although she doesn't want to make a big deal out of this, impersonating someone and using their photos on an app is a criminal act. If it happens again, we'll take legal action. Just so you know. No!
Urged by my boyfriend, I turned my back on her. As I walked away, receiving congratulatory words from friends, I glanced back. She remained crumbled on the spot, biting her lips. She left soon after and didn't show up at the gathering again. Later, I heard through the grapevine that when she returned home, she found nothing there. The supposed lawyer had blocked her calls and went silent.
Recently passed the bar exam and have no money for my parents' hospital bills. I want to open my own office near our new home. I need funding for that.
Believing these words, she had quickly given him money. Not having enough in savings, she even borrowed from consumer finance companies. As for the large diamond ring she boasted about, it turned out to be a fake when appraised, something sold in a novelty store for $7. Later, Dennis and I got married. Our life didn't change much since we were already living together, but seeing my wedding ring during work always brings a smile to my face. The realization that I'm married to him fills me with joy. He respects my dedication to my work, and we support each other. What is happiness? For me, it's being married to someone who treasures me.